So a culture that is congruent and is clearly communicated provides endless benefits to that franchise organization, and of course protects the brand equity and creates greater effectiveness across the board. So a franchisee who shares a franchisor's company culture will prove to be more compatible and will likely perform better. Which brings us to the fourth component of compatibility. All of these pieces are important. A franchisee that shares the work style of the high performers within a franchise organization will prove to be more compatible. Now, work style is particularly important for the business owner because it will ultimately set the pace, the direction, and the priorities that that franchisee is going to be focusing on, and asking in turn that his partners and his employees will also be focusing on. So work style translates into how that franchisee will direct his business, motivate his employees, manage the finances, how he or she is going to evaluate, delegate, and resolve day-to-day business situations. Now, just because someone is compatible, they share the franchisor's values, they share the franchisor's stage of growth, they share the franchisor's culture, and they have similar work style as the high performers within that franchise system, doesn't completely lead us to believe that they're going to be a high performer. It's going to go a long way that direction, but we also want to look at the competencies. So Zoracle assesses three primary areas of competencies. As brokers, you are looking at one of these three. The franchisor will dig more deeply with the others. So you will be assessing the core competencies: sales, marketing, operational skills, technical skills, HR and training skills, the hard competencies. The franchisor will assess emotional and social intelligence, and also the ability for the prospective franchisee to be able to shift from one aspect of the business to another. We call that a focus preference. Bottom line, you want a franchisee that complements a franchisor's competencies. So what the franchisor brings to the table, let's say that's back office systems and national marketing and a great product, then we're looking for a franchisee that fits within that, doesn't replicate that, but simply complements it by having maybe sales skills and operational skills, or HR and training and customer service skills. So franchisor needs to be good at what they do, and a prospective franchisee needs to have complementary skill sets. This will allow us to have long-term relationship, an interdependent relationship, and one in which we can leverage each other's talents and expertise and skills. So complementary competencies reduces redundancy. We don't want the franchisee doing what the franchisor is doing, and vice versa. So it makes better use of the resources of both parties and provides a point of correspondence where we can have greater value and greater overall compatibility and performance. So I wanted to show you very quickly, and anyone that's interested in seeing what we call an eclipse report, which is what the franchisor gets, if you're interested in seeing those reports, send me an email or send Phil an email asking for it. But I wanted to show you a quick kind of picture of what goes on here. Over to the left is your portion of the competency report of the SpotOn profile. It shows you the leadership skills, the management skills, the admin and customer service skills, the operational skills. However, that data up until recently, all you could do is pass that data on, but the franchisor couldn't then take that data and compare it to their high performers. So going forward, you will be able to share this data, and it will repopulate in the franchisor's dashboard and recreate what's called an eclipse report. They're already running eclipse reports on their organic leads. We want them now to be able to also run it on your leads and make things easier for you too. So to the right, you can see that these marks, this gray area, are the ideals. This is the ideal markers that this franchise system needs this prospective franchisee to score in. And we can see the green dots is where the prospective franchisee is scoring. So we notice pretty quickly that this candidate has higher marketing skills than the franchisor is requesting or requiring, and yet he or she has lower operational skills and lower technical skills. This may or may not be a reason to walk away from this prospect, but it certainly is a reason to consider some coaching or some training in the areas that that franchisee might be weak, or minimally having a conversation with that franchisee about hiring someone that can fill in those gaps. So to review, compatibility plus competencies equal performance. And Zorkel simply uses this meta-analysis approach, these 7 different sciences, to look at a franchisor's current franchisees. So what we do is we go into these franchise systems and we go through a 4-step process. First, we set some standards in place. What currently are they measuring? Things like ramp-up time, things like revenue, things like profitability or market share or customer retention or social media scores. So our franchisor, in tandem with Zorkel, will set some standards and benchmarks in place where the franchisor says these 20 franchisees have this kind of revenue, this kind of profitability, this much market share, and they ramped up in this kind of time. So we set those standards in place. Once we have set those standards in place, we then assess all of their current franchisees. They take the 7 different sciences, all built in one tool. Assessment takes about 15 minutes. Once we have all of that data, we export the data and we tell the franchisor, here are the franchisees that have completed the assessment, and the franchisor will then separate those franchisees into 3 or 4 groups: high performers, mid performers, low performers, group A, B, and C, depending on how they line up with the standards and benchmarks that we agreed upon. Group A will meet those standards and benchmarks. They will be performing well and they will be compatible. Group B will be individuals that largely are compatible but may not be performing as optimally as they could. And then group C are obviously those folks that are either not compatible, not performing, and or both. These are folks we do not want to replicate. So once we have that data, then our job at Zorkel is to look at the correlations and the causation of things like ramp up, performance, customer retention. We are looking, is there a psychographic marker or several markers that correlate to why our A players are different than our B players and our C players? We call it a top performer or compatibility blueprint. It's a franchise blueprint. It's about a 50 to 70-page document that categorically compares the A players to the B players and the C players. And then from there, we make some recommendations about what the ideal franchisee model is. These are statistical numbers, they're targets and weights, and then going forward, we implement those algorithms into the software, and the franchisor provides a link to the prospective franchisee. The franchisee takes the assessment, and then they are categorically compared to the ideals, to the high performers. It's called an eclipse report. It's about a 12-page document that breaks down each of these sciences and shows the franchisor quickly where their candidate is fitting and where it isn't. So here, one that you're very familiar with, which is the values. We can see this franchisor requires someone that's a strong achiever, a societal. And our candidate here is a strong societal, low achiever. He's a societal emulator. Now, most of you that understand this probably know this is a young person that's very innovative and at the same time wants to make a difference. Great for some franchise organizations, not a great values fit for this particular franchise organization. Again, if you want a sample of any of these reports so you can see what the franchisor is seeing, please just send Phil or myself a note. So up until now, when you sent a report to a franchisor, they couldn't generate an eclipse report unless we manually did that, nor were you able to know immediately, is my candidate a good fit for X, Y, or Z franchise system? So as you know, we've been doing this for a while. We work with all size franchise organizations, some of which you're going to say, oh, they're in my inventory, and others like Verizon Wireless Zone, probably our largest client, or Auntie Anne's or Kuman, maybe franchise organizations that are not in your inventory, at least not yet. We're hoping to change that for you, where you have access to some of these companies that you may not have had access to before. So again, many of these companies are emerging ZORs, they're mid-sized ZORs, and some of them are quite large and of various verticals that they are working in. So as a broker, you're going to do what you've always done. If you're a client of Zoracle, you're still going to send out your link to your prospective franchisee, or they're going to take the assessment from your website, or you maybe posted an article and the link is in your article, or you have the link on some social media, and someone will take the assessment and you will get back an email just like you always did. And soon you will notice at the bottom of the email, it will say, note, to view Kevin's SpotOn matches, log into the dashboard. I would recommend that you go to the dashboard on a regular basis anyway, even if it doesn't have this marker. But when it says, note, to view Kevin's SpotOn matches, log into your dashboard, this lets you know Kevin has some matches. Now, there may be times that a prospective franchisee that you're working with doesn't currently have matches, and that simply means we haven't yet assessed the franchise system that they would be a good match for. That doesn't mean they're not good for match for franchising. It simply means we currently don't have a match for them in our inventory.